So hey guys, I'm basically gonna walk you guys through my research project and how I came up with the idea, the purpose behind it, and how I actually executed the project. So as you guys can see, my project is mainly about making African American women comfortable giving birth in the United States. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, did you know that 69.9 African American women died per 100,000 live births? This is approximately 2.6 times higher than any other racial demographic. This was important to me specifically because as a young African American woman, of course, like anyone else, I want to start a family one day. However, when I do ultimately decide that I want to give birth, I want to be able to trust our hospital system rather than have to worry that I'm going to be a part of the statistic of 69.9%. In reality, this is not only an important issue for African American women, this is also the reality for African American women and men, of course, but also it's also important for other racial demographics. So this brings me to my thesis statement. In order for African American women to feel comfortable giving birth in United States hospitals, there are two changes that we need to make sure to implement. One of them being better detection equipment, specifically sonography equipment. And the next thing is for more education, which means more classes for expecting parents. Before I could successfully conduct this research project, it was very detrimental that I went back and looked at the history of African American neglect in medical systems. So the first thing was, according to the Smithsonian Museum for African American History, was that African American women back in the 1800s, they played a vital role in the birthing process. They were coined as what is called granny midwives, which are just midwives. However, today they would be the equivalents of nurse practitioners. However, this was short-lived due to the emergence of doctors in hospitals. According to Camilla Domanowski, she talks about Father J. Marion Sims. He is also coined as the father of gynecology. Now, he is very important to this project because he would experiment on these African American women without their consent. And you could say that this was the first neglect in hospital systems. So what really brought me to my project was one day I was scrolling on TikTok and I saw this lady talking about how she would rather go on an airplane pregnant and go give birth overseas rather than giving birth in the United States. This made me wonder, what can we do to make women more comfortable giving birth in the United States? Because going on airplanes while you're pregnant is not very safe for you and the baby. So before I could get to my methodology for real, I had to propose two methods, which I use narrative inquiry, which is using the story of other women saying about their birthing process, and then content analysis to apply what I got from that narrative inquiry to my project. So before I could actually carry out my methods and successfully, complete the whole thing, I had to bring this in front of a review board and get this project approved, which it was. So doing my methodology, I actually first got to talk to an African American doula. She was very nice and she was there to pretty much answer all my medical questions that I had. She explained to me that when women did come to her practice, they went through what to expect before birth, what to expect after birth, and if they have any other children, what to expect going forward as their siblings. Not only that, but I got to talk to 6 African American women about their birthing process. However, prior to doing that, they had to fill out a consent form to be interviewed and for their interview to be transcribed. Once we got all that, they interviewed, and then after they interviewed, they filled out a Google Forms talking about how their experience was, and they rated their experience on a scale of 1 to 3. 1 being poor service, 3 being excellent service. So my results from this project is that 66.67 women voted that, you know, their service was satisfactory. Like, it wasn't poor, but it wasn't excellent. And the other 33% had excellent experience. But amongst these stories, two stood out to me. One of the ladies ended up saying that through her birthing process, she actually went to classes and she felt like she was more educated when it was time for her to give birth, and how this allowed her to have personal autonomy and speak up if she felt like she was being mistreated. So that made me feel like if more parents, incoming parents, no matter the race, were educated before giving birth, that we would not have these problems. Not only that, but doctors should be more informed of cultural differences when it comes to giving birth. Not only that, but we need to have better sonography equipment. The other participant that really stood out to me, she almost underwent a placental abruption, which is when the uterus detaches from, well, when the placenta detaches from the uterus, which is not good for both the mother and the baby because this is lack of nutrients and oxygen and all these other bad stuff. So basically, she just went on to say that if the doctors would have took better care of her, and if they would have knew ahead of time that she was about to have this placental abruption, she could have avoided the C-section and whatnot. All right, thank you for listening.